Tehran has been sending mixed signals to Riyadh. One day, Iran says embassies should be reopened in the two countries. The next day, they warn Saudi Arabia against relying on Israel. Is Iran trying to mend ties with its greatest West Asian rival? Our next report has all the details.
Iran and Saudi Arabia have a long history of being rivals. Shiite Iran and Sunni Saudi Arabia have been fighting proxy wars across West Asia. In Yemen, the Houthi rebels are backed by Iran. They are fighting the Saudi-backed government. Hostilities have resumed after the UN-brokered ceasefire ended earlier this month.
Today, Friday, October 2, there was an attack by two baby-trapped aircrafts on Al Dhaba oil port. The first strike was at 11:05 GMT between the ship and the buoy, and the second strike at approximately 11:20 GMT, and it was closer to the ship.
Iran has backed both Shiite political parties and armed groups in other parts of West Asia. Iraq, Syria and Lebanon are all theaters of the shadow war between the two rivals. But could there be a thaw in relations between the two powers? The top commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guard warned Saudi Arabia against relying on Israel. Hussein Salami said, and I quote, "You are relying on an Israel which is collapsing, and this will be the end of your era." This was in reference to Riyadh's backing of the Abraham Accords. Israel signed the accords with the UAE and Bahrain in September 2020. The US mediated the signing of the accords. While Saudi Arabia still does not officially recognize Israel, it signaled its support of the new relations. Israel has also said it is willing to work militarily with the Gulf nations. Reports say that Iran's warning could be an attempt to humiliate Saudi Arabia. Iran has blamed the unrest in the country on foreign actors. Protests after 22-year-old Mahsa Amini's reported death in police custody continue to rock the regime. The warning to Riyadh may be another attempt to pin the blame on Israel. But it could also be a genuine attempt to mend ties. The Iranian statement about Israel came a day after a top advisor to Iran's supreme leader called for the reopening of embassies. Ali Akbar Velayati had said, and I quote, "We are neighbors of Saudi Arabia and we must coexist." The embassies of the two countries should reopen in order to solve our problems in a better way. The embassies were closed in 2016 after mobs attacked Saudi diplomatic missions in Iran. Iran and Saudi Arabia have been in direct talks to mend relations since last year. 5 rounds of talks have occurred in Baghdad between the two nations. The last round of talks took place in April. Iran's outreach to the Saudis also comes as relations between the kingdom and the US are at a low. The US has deep security ties with the Gulf nations, but the OPEC nations recently agreed to cut oil production, which led to fury in Washington. The US even accused Saudi Arabia of not choosing a side in the Russia-Ukraine war. This is because the decision to cut oil production was taken with Russia during an OPEC Plus meeting. Saudi Arabia has denied these allegations. It has also voted against Russia at the UN recently. The Gulf states have said it was a purely economic decision to cut oil production. Meanwhile, Iran has been accused of providing Russia with drones for its war in Ukraine. Kyiv has degraded diplomatic ties with Tehran. It has also called for sanctions on Iran for helping Russia. Tehran has denied the allegations that it is helping Russia. Within this geopolitical context, both Iran and Saudi Arabia have recently faced the ire of the US. Reports of them trying to mend ties will probably agitate Washington further. Perhaps this is why the US seems to be reaching out to Riyadh. On Tuesday, the US released this statement.
We've taken note since the OPEC Plus cut that Saudi Arabia voted against Russia at the United Nations and also pledged $4 million to support Ukraine's reconstruction and humanitarian needs. These steps do not compensate, though, for the production cut, but they are noteworthy. And we'll be watching to see what Saudi Arabia does over the coming weeks, and we'll inform our consultations and review.
West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.